Hey everyone, and welcome back. Ever had one of those moments where you just stare at something or someone and think, what on earth is happening? This makes no sense. Or maybe you felt that deep down existential dread, asking what's the point of it all? If so, congratulations. You've probably brushed up against one of philosophy's most fascinating, unsettling, and strangely liberating concepts: the absurd. Today, we're diving into the absurd, not just as a philosophical idea, but how it manifests in our art, how we communicate, and how it shapes our societies. Get ready to embrace the glorious, nonsensical chaos. So, what is the absurd? At its core, it's the fundamental conflict between humanity's innate desire for meaning, order, and purpose, and the cold, silent, indifferent universe that offers none. Think about it. We desperately want our lives to mean something, to have a grand narrative, but the universe doesn't care. It just is. This isn't about things being ridiculous or silly, though those can be expressions of the absurd. It's a deeper, more profound mismatch. Philosophers like Albert Camus, one of the most famous proponents of absurdism, articulated this beautifully. He said, "The absurd is born of this confrontation between the human need and the unreasonable silence of the world." It's not nihilism, which says life has no meaning and that's it. Absurdism acknowledges the lack of inherent meaning, but then asks, okay, so what now? How do we live? Now, how does this incredibly abstract idea show up in something as concrete as visual communication? Well, quite powerfully. Visual communication often relies on established codes, symbols, and expectations to convey messages clearly. The absurd, however, thrives on disrupting these. Think about humor. A lot of comedy, especially surreal or anti humor, works by setting up an expectation and then completely subverting it. Your brain tries to make sense of something, and when it can't, you often laugh. It's a release of that tension. Political cartoons frequently use absurd imagery to highlight the illogical or contradictory nature of policies or politicians. By exaggerating features or placing figures in ridiculous scenarios, they expose the underlying absurdity of power structures or societal norms. Even in advertising, sometimes the most memorable campaigns use a touch of the absurd to break through the noise. They create an image or a mini narrative that initially makes no sense, forcing you to pay attention and then connect it back to their product in an unexpected way. The goal isn't always to confuse, it's often to provoke thought, challenge assumptions, and make us look at familiar things in unfamiliar ways. Art for centuries has been a natural home for the absurd. When artists confront the meaninglessness of existence, they don't necessarily give up, they often create. Let's start with Dadaism. Born out of the horrors of World War I, Dada artists believed that if the world could descend into such madness, then art should reflect that same irrationality. They rejected logic and reason, embracing nonsense and anti-art. Is it absurd? Absolutely, it challenged the very definition of aesthetics and meaning in art. Then we have Surrealism, which directly explored the subconscious, dreams, and the irrational. Artists like Salvador Dali created dreamscapes where familiar objects were distorted, melted, or placed in impossible contexts. These works don't follow logical rules. They invite us to embrace the strange, the unsettling, and the profoundly illogical. They present us with worlds where the rules of reality are bent, mirroring the absurd notion that our own reality might not have the inherent logic we crave. And it's not just historical movements. Contemporary art continues to play with the absurd. Think about performance art, where artists might engage in repetitive, seemingly pointless tasks, or create installations that challenge our understanding of space and purpose. It forces us to question, what am I looking at? Why is this here? What does it mean? And often the answer is, it just is. Art in this sense becomes a coping mechanism, a way to express and even find beauty in the very meaninglessness we confront. Now let's zoom out to society itself. The social sciences, from sociology to anthropology to political science, constantly grapple with how humans create meaning and order. But even here, the absurd peeks through, often revealing the arbitrary nature of our constructs. Consider bureaucracy. We create complex systems of rules and regulations designed to bring order and fairness. Yet how often do these systems become so convoluted, so self-serving, that they produce entirely absurd outcomes? Endless forms, redundant procedures, rules that contradict each other. It's the human desire for order colliding with its own unintended, illogical consequences. Think about social rituals or traditions. Many of them start with a clear purpose, but over time, their original meaning can be lost, yet we continue to perform them. Why? Because that's just how it's done. The ritual persists, sometimes in an almost absurd, hollowed out form, because it's part of our social fabric, even if its original logic has vanished. In political science, we see the absurd in the rhetoric of leaders who promise impossible solutions, or in the cyclical nature of political debates, where fundamental issues are never resolved, only reframed. The human drive to find solutions clashes with the inherent complexity and often irrationality of human collective action. Even our understanding of identity can be absurd. We try to categorize ourselves and others to fit into neat boxes, but human experience is fluid and contradictory. The pressure to conform to an ideal when that ideal might itself be arbitrary or even harmful creates an absurd tension. Recognizing the absurd in social structures isn't about giving up on trying to improve things. It's about acknowledging that our attempts at order will always have their illogical edges, and that sometimes the most rational thing to do is to laugh at the ridiculousness of it all. So, if life is meaningless, if everything we strive for is ultimately just a blip in an uncaring cosmos, should we just throw our hands up in despair? Absolutely not. This is where the profound liberation of absurdism comes in. Camus proposed three ways to deal with the absurd: suicide, a leap of faith, or revolt. He rejected the first two. The key is revolt. To revolt against the absurd means to acknowledge the meaninglessness, but to keep living, to create your own meaning, to embrace the freedom that comes from knowing there are no preordained rules or purposes. It's about being like Sisyphus, the mythical figure condemned to roll a boulder up a hill, only for it to roll back down forever. Camus says Sisyphus is the absurd hero. He knows his task is futile, yet he keeps pushing the stone. In that defiance, in that conscious act of pushing, he finds his own meaning. One must imagine Sisyphus happy, Camus famously wrote. This is about finding joy and passion in the act of living itself, in creating art, in connecting with others, in pursuing knowledge, in simple pleasures, precisely because they don't have some grand, externally imposed purpose. Their value comes from us, from our choice to value them. So, the next time you encounter something utterly baffling, something that makes no logical sense, don't despair. Don't immediately try to impose an external meaning. Instead, perhaps smile. Acknowledge the absurd. Find the humor in it. Create something new from it. Because in a world that offers no inherent meaning, the incredible absurd freedom we have is to create our own. And that, my friends, is a pretty beautiful thing. What do you find absurd in daily life? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this dive into the wonderfully nonsensical, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs a good existential chuckle. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.